My name's Paul Sinclair and I'd like to introduce you today to a series of videos highlighting my research into unexplained phenomena around East and North Yorkshire. If you like what you see, please subscribe to this YouTube channel or find our Truth Proof page on Facebook. The next story I'm going to talk about is XS894, the RAF Lightning that crashed on September the 8th, 1970. In the past it's been covered by other researchers such as Tony Dodd, and there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this case, and rightly so. It upset members of the family. It really did. I think potentially it's probably one of the most amazing UFO related stories out there, even though we're going back a lot of years, back to 1970, simply because the information that I've found packs around the UFO story and highlights the fact that I would jump off the fence here and actually say I do think it's UFO related. With some of the other cases you can't actually say that, but this one, there's definitely an element there that suggests that it is UFO related. So to jump back to the story and why I think that, days before the aircraft crashed on September the 8th, 1970, a RAF Marine launch based at Bridlington, one of three, was out off the coast, not far from this location, when it was holed, a 25-foot by 12-inch hole ripped into its hull by an unknown submerged object. It had to be beached on North Beach. Now, we've got the newspaper archives from the day and the pictures to show. Obviously, there's no explanation for what holed it. Does that make it a UFO-related event relating to the Lightning? Of course it doesn't, no, but it's another highly unusual event that took place in close proximity to where this happened. A few days after the Lightning crashed, I think it was 2 days after, I think it was about 4 miles away at Barmston, a speedboat with 5 occupants in it, the father and his children and a family friend. The wife was watching from the shore and says that they weren't travelling very fast, disintegrated. Something hit it, or it hit something below the surface with such an impact that the boat disintegrated. The occupants were clinging to the wreckage, an inflatable tyre, wooden seats that were in the boat, and a pleasure cruiser, I think, called the Glen Rose, picked them up. Luckily, probably about 30 to 40 minutes later, because the father was in really bad shape. I don't think he could have lasted much longer. So jumping back, does this mean it's UFO related? Of course it doesn't. But when you look through archives around Beverley, at the Treasure House, at Bridlington, at Scarborough, in the libraries, and go through these microfilms, you don't find incidents like this very often. Now, the Lightning was allegedly pursuing a UFO, and there's a radio transcript which is debatable. People have said it's a fake radio transcript of the pilot talking with, I think it's RAF Staxton Wold, and saying that he can see glowing orange conical shaped objects at the side of his aircraft, and he was ordered to ditch the aircraft. Whether that transcript is true or not, the fact remains that these unusual things were happening. Now, I recently spoke to the former butcher at Flamborough, the small village of Flamborough. This guy, Dean Bolton, that's his name. Now, he remembers as a schoolboy, I want to link in his history to the village and everything, because, he's not just some outsider that's just decided to tell a story. He remembers as a schoolboy being taken with some other schoolboys to look at landing tracers on the cliff tops at Flamborough where an alleged UFO landed. And I'd heard the story before, and I said, was this land on Mr. Waynes's land? And he said it was, because I'd previously heard it from the former lighthouse keeper at Flamborough, who gave me an envelope with some sighting reports saying that he'd collected whilst lighthouse keeper, which he daren't tell because it would shatter his credibility as a lighthouse keeper. But on one of the reports, it was UFO landed on cliff tops at Flamborough. But this guy, Dean, actually gave me a date or a month. And he knew it was 1970, and he said it was early September 1970. Now, the Lightning crashed. It vanished from radar 5 miles off Flamborough Head. I think they found it about 10 miles off Flamborough Head, so it would have travelled a considerable distance. Is it inconceivable to think that we've got a story of a landed UFO, we've got a lighthouse keeper that's confirmed it, we've got the former butcher of Flamborough who as a schoolboy confirms members of the school children all going to look at landing traces where this object landed. And there's another interesting element which Dean told me. He said that the MOD visited the farmer a few days after, or after the event. I'm not going to say 2 days, it could have been 5, but after the event, and asked him to plough out the field where the object had landed. I think everything points to the fact that something highly unusual happened here. When I first started looking into it, when going back to the 2000s, I contacted Tony Dodd, who'd researched this extensively. And Tony wanted to work with me in the background because he said he no longer wanted to become public knowing about this case because of death threats. I think that's the severity of what we were dealing with XS894. I've never received anything like that. However, I did receive some unsigned letters dropped through my letterbox, and I believe they were red herrings. I've still got the letters, and I think I've put a copy of one of them in Truth Proof, the first book. And basically what the letters said were that during the Cold War, Russian factory ships, the trawlers, were on the 10-mile limit, but not all of them were factory ships. Some of them were sniffing out Fylingdales and various locations around the East and North Yorkshire coast. And they said, one of the letters said that Russian divers got to the Lightning first, before our divers, our military got to it first. And they retrieved the body for the flight suit technology. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. But that's what the letter said. Apparently this exchange pilot allegedly was flying the Lightning, which was supposed to have been the fastest plane in the world, or acceleration and climb at the time, testing new flight suit technology. I'm not subscribing to the idea that this is correct. I'm just relaying what one of the letters said to me. So, you know, you've got all these different elements surrounding this case, and you kind of wonder, was it UFO related? I would sort of lean to the fact that it was. There's another one I was told about by a son and his mum, who were observing 5 large pewter, is the description, like a dull silver coloured discs that were flying over Bempton out towards Flamborough. And this guy can even date this to September the 16th. And the reason, or around September the 16th, the reason he said that is that the program UFO, the Jerry Anderson program, had just started, and that's why he always knew, and he's not sort of made the fanciful story up. I mean, this guy's in his 50s now. He's contacted me and told me that he saw these objects, and they're 5 pewter-shaped discs, with his mum, travelling out over towards Flamborough and Bempton, slowly travelling out to sea. He said in the centre of these discs there was a large, almost volcanic-looking, glowing coals. It's hard to describe. It looked like the inside of a volcano. And that, you know, they could see these things as a daylight sighting. His mum even got the binoculars and looked at these things. So there's just a few elements sort of connecting XS894 to a potential UFO-related incident. If we stay on the subject of pilot encounters with UFOs or potential UFOs, there's an interesting one from 1996. Once again, we're going back quite a lot of years, but nevertheless, I think they're worth listening to, because not many people will have ever heard this. And The encounter took place very close to a burial mound called Willie Howe, which is probably one of the most famous burial mounds in the United Kingdom. Anybody who wants to Google it, you'll see that the stories attached to it of elves and goblins and all sorts of mysterious things seem to have happened over periods of hundreds of years around Willie Howe. This guy had a small vintage aircraft that he kept at an airfield very close to Willie Howe. I think there was only 2 or 3 aircraft using it at the time. And this guy had a vintage aircraft, wasn't equipped for night flying. I think that's important to say in this story. And this particular day, nice sunny day, back in November, crisp day, he decided to have a fly up the coast towards Whitby. And he said, he described the aircraft as having altitude, acceleration, and there was something else on it. I'm not that technically minded, but there's only 3 things on this very old aircraft. And he's flying up the coast towards Whitby. It gets to about 2 in the afternoon, and he said he's thinking to himself, well, I've got to get back before it gets dark, because obviously I'm not licensed to fly this aircraft in the dark. And as he's approaching the area of Willie Howe, he says, I can see the sun setting, and thinking, oh yeah, I'm just giving myself enough time here. He said, and then sort of turned to my right. He said, and I can see another sun. And I'm thinking, there's like a spell of confusion here. You can see the sun setting and there's another sun. He said, at that moment, he said it was almost as though the aircraft had flown into a cobweb in the air. The aircraft didn't de-accelerate. The rev, the note of the engine continued exactly the same. But he just slowed down. He said, as though you were, he gave 2 analogies, and the cobweb one, or as though you were applying the brakes to a motor vehicle. He said, and I've stopped in the air. He said, and I'm not going up because I'm looking at this meter, whatever this meter is, listeners, because you know I won't understand what it is, but I'm looking at this. I'm not going up, I'm not going down. I'm travelling at the same speed, but I'm not moving. He says, and I'm confused. He says, this is just crazy. And he's just seen this second sun, which couldn't have been the sun. But just to detract from that for a moment, we're in the area where these spheres of orange light are seen prolifically through the 2000s. We know he's talking 1996, but these farmers and all the locals in the area, whether they want to openly admit it or not, have all seen these spheres of light. Lots of them talk about them to me. So is that what he's encountered, up close and personal, that's made it resemble a second sun? So to jump back to the story, he's confused. The aircraft's stationary in the air, and then the next thing he knows, he's flying again, but it's dark. It's night. He just can't believe it. He can see the Humber Bridge in the distance, and he considers flying on to Humberside Airport. But obviously realises no one would believe him. He's just had this weird encounter with a second sun, and the aircraft stopped in the air. He'd probably lose his pilot's licence. Well, luckily for him, he said that there was a tractor ploughing a field, and he knew he could see Flamborough Lighthouse sweeping in the distance. He sort of could get his bearings. There were some power cables going across the field. He also knew this, but he thought, if I can clear them, I can put this down in the field. And that's exactly what he did. I was the first person he's ever relayed this story to. He still flies aircraft today. He's had one more incident, which I haven't got the details of, to be able to relay the story at a different airfield. And yeah, I just think it's an incredible encounter, going back to 1996.
Please subscribe to this channel by clicking the icon. Click on the notification bell to get notification of future videos.